Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the sessions on understanding editors' perspective. And before we formally begin this session, kindly allow me to introduce our esteemed panel members. We already know Professor Dimitrios, not a speaker. Around workshops around the world, logical disruptions, strategy, smart cities, smart tourism, hospitality technology, strategy, and hospitality organizations. He delivers more than 30 keynote addresses per year around the globe, often for United Nations World Tourism Organization, the European Commission, the European Travel Commission, along with many governments, associations, and hotel chains. So as a facilitator, Professor Dimitrios brings a specialist knowledge and simulates discussion and innovative and strategic objectives towards new frontiers. He focuses on technology-driven market disruptions and explain how smartness, agility, and Internet of Things transform society, business parity. Written and co-edited more than 20 books and has more than 250 scientific articles to his name. One of the most he's the most cited scholar in strategy and marketing. An impressive H index of 91. Sir, I have and thank you for devoting your time and valuable time.
Thank you so much. Glad to be with you.
Thank you, sir.
Fantastic to see Rodoula, and hopefully Mark will be joining us in a minute. What do you like to do? Do you like a discussion? Do you want a presentation?
Sir, we have three speakers here, so maybe about 15 minutes.
Okay, your internet is not very good. You keep cutting off.
Sure, being a lot of applications and their views. Sir, I leave it up.
Okay, I'm not sure I can hear you because your internet's cutting off. I'm not sure if it's me or if it's you. But happy to do a short presentation to present tourism review and make people understand.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. In between web sir, your I think the connectivity goes down, so the video stops. We'll check it. If in case it continues, maybe you can turn off your video because the bandwidth that you are in might be lower. So we'll let you know once. Okay.
So is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah, as of now it's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And also it will be nice to see the people because there are a lot of people who are hiding, and I see a black screen which I don't like.
So so please request all the audience members to please switch on your videos. It will be better, and I'm sure that it will create a much more fruitful discussion. And I'm very sure that there will be a lot of questions from this audience panel given the nature of the topic. Let me introduce Professor Rodoula Tsiotsou. She's a PhD from Florida State University, currently serving as Professor of Services Marketing and Director of the Marketing Laboratory at the Department of Business Administration, University of Macedonia, Greece. She is a member of the Board of Directors at Interlife and Onassis Scholar Foundation. At the same time, she has served as the member of the Board of Directors at the Athens, Macedonia News Agency. Professor Rodoula has authored a book on sports management and is currently serving as associate editor at the Journal of Services Marketing. She is also at the editorial board of several journals such as Services Industries Journal, International Review of Public and Non-Profit Marketing, and Tourismos. Ma'am, thank you for joining us, and please pardon me if I may have made some mistake in terms of pronunciation. We also have Professor Mark Rosenbaum, who will be joining us in a minute. Let me just introduce him to the audience. Professor Rosenbaum is currently serving as the Dean, College of Business at Hawaii Pacific University. He is also the co-editor at the Journal of Services Marketing. Prior to this leadership role, Professor Rosenbaum was chair and professor at the Department of Retailing at the University of South Carolina. He served as Coles Professor of Marketing at Northern Illinois University and assistant professor at the Department of Marketing at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Professor Rosenbaum is a two-time Fulbright scholar and a Fulbright specialist, a research fellow at the Arizona State University's W.P. Carey School of Business, and a visiting professor in marketing at the Universidad de Externado at Bogota, Colombia, and the American Hotel Academy at Brasov, Romania. Professor Rosenbaum earned his PhD in marketing from Arizona State University. He is serving as co-editor of the Journal of Services Marketing, associate editor at the Journal of Business Research and the Service Industries Journal. He is also serving as the editorial board member of several services and travel-related journals. So, we have a very esteemed panel, and I'm very sure that this is one of the sessions which every conference participant is looking for, and they may be having questions. So, what I'll basically set up a theme over there, and maybe then allow our each of our participants to say a few words on that. I want audience to listen to our panel members more than my talk. Editor's role is a very challenging role. You have to wear a lot of hats, and you are basically responsible for the overall quality and intellectual content and the reputation and the direction in which the journal is going to go. Right from you have to take care of all the stakeholders in terms of researchers, in terms of readers, in terms of the editorial board members, reviewers. And I'm very sure that, given the audience, and we have a wide nature of audience right now, right from the young researchers who are just about to start their publication journey, they've just finished their PhD or are in their coursework. Plus, we also have researchers who are seasoned researchers who have published in A or A-star publications, and also maybe in terms of serving may have reviewed also manuscripts for some reputed journals. So keeping that in mind, maybe I'll I thought of three broad areas, but maybe I'll leave it to the our esteemed panel member to focus on as per their whatever they think is more useful for the audience. You are the best judge. But my basic three important areas, given the time, was three important things. One is in terms of inviting quality manuscript. How do you invite and ensure that you get quality here? And what is quality? And what are your expectations from the authors when they are submitting to a reputed journals? That is number one. And more specifically, what is significant contribution to the research? Because there are sometimes we come across that your contribution is marginal, or we get comments like this. You need to improve upon the contribution of your research, and how is your research contributing to the existing theory and managerial decisions. The second point will be about the management of the review process, mostly about in that case, because some of our audience members may be a part of, and they may be reviewing, or those who are not doing it may be doing it sometime. What are your expectations from the reviewers in terms of the review process? And the third and the most important part is about the decision making. When you decide upon the manuscript, whether it is acceptance or whether it is rejection, and revise and resubmit. More specifically, rejections. How do you want? What is your suggestions to the author, specifically young scholars? How they should handle rejections of their manuscript? How they should take it and keep their motivation up? So. These are the three basic things, but again, these are not exhaustive list. You may please include any content that you may find fit for the audience. Okay. So I'll start with Professor Dimitrios. Sir, what we'll do is basically we'll keep about 15 minutes for each of our panel members in terms of talking about this topic. And maybe my request to the audience will be that please, in case you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box, and I will also appreciate in case you have the question from any specific members of our panel. So I'll hand over the stage to Professor Dimitrios. Sir, all over to you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic to be you with young colleagues and share some of the thoughts. Your answer early on was not audible. Do you want a little presentation where we kind of answer some of these things?
Sir, I will leave it up to you, but my only request will be if you can keep your presentation to 15-20 minutes so that because of the limitation of time, we have to wind up the session by 3:50.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so let me go and explain to you a little bit about what we do in tourism review and how over the years we have developed the tourism review, and I'll answer some of your questions in this process. So tourism review has grown dramatically. It's the oldest and the most established tourism journal, 77 years in publication. I took over end of 2016 to 2017. And now tourism review has got an impact factor of 5.9 in 2020, and it's got a site score tracker in January, 7.7. You'll see the growth, but one of the things is an invitation to begin with. We're doing the call for papers for tourism review Agenda 2030, where we're looking into what's going to happen by 2030 and how tourism can actually contribute to the sustainable development goals. Very much on lines of what the presentation earlier when we're discussing about these things. So you can see the growth of the journal. You can see we're a generic journal. So we are inviting papers from a whole range of things that are related to tourism. It can be marketing, management, can be all kind of issues, image, influence, management, crisis, whatever. We're a generic journal in tourism. And you can see what has happened. I took over in 2016 when the journal was publishing 21 articles. We have now built to 80 articles with an anomaly in 2020 when we celebrated 75 years with 75 papers. But now we've kind of stabilized to 80 papers per year. You can see site score growing, and you can see the site score tracker in January 2022 being 7.7. And you can see how the impact factor grew from 1 in 2018 to 5.9 in 2020. I cannot wait to get the new impact factor, as you can imagine, but we'll have to wait until the summer. When you look into the statistics, you can see how the journal is growing and how many more people are reading it, and that is reflecting the development of the journal globally, where China is playing a very, very important role, but India does not somehow appear. And a lot of the Indian papers I'm getting, I'm rejecting immediately, and that's something I'd like to talk to you about. You can see what's happening with citations, and you can see what's happening with the growth of the journal, and you can see which countries and which universities are primarily submitting. And you can see how the journal have grown in less than a year. So in 2020, we had 1,200 citations. In 2021, we had more than 2,000 citations, and there are more coming in. Now, the important thing is from people who are watching and the people who are interested in publishing the journal, what every editor is looking for is a bright idea. They are looking for this bright kind of paper that they're going to do, and we're looking for the golden egg. That's something that's the best research and the best paper. And we're all competing, all the journals are competing. That's why I show you the statistics, because in order to get cited, in order to grow, we really need to publish good stuff. And we really need to send away all the stuff that's not very good. Now, a lot of the authors are in this kind of mindset. I need to publish 3 SSCI journals, and I couldn't care less where and how. Yeah. And you find the more you come towards Asia, the more you find the quantitative kind of targeting of journals and the less kind of involvement with the journal. And that's a very good reason why a lot of papers are getting rejected, because people do not involve with the journal. And I always say to people, do you read the journal? Do you know the latest papers that are published in the journal? Do you discuss the papers published? Do you reference the papers published? Do you review the journal for the journal? And I think those are critical kind of things that you need to do in order to engage with the journal. I just desk rejected the paper that came in and was talking about smart tourism because it didn't have the up-to-date kind of thing and hadn't engaged with the journal, hadn't engaged with the top guys. I'm going to say that a lot of people are trying the rapid publication route, and the rapid publication route may be quick, but it's not safe. And I think it's not addressing valid problems and it's not making a contribution to society. What we're trying to do with Tourism Review is to make a solid contribution to society by looking into problems and by resolving them. So if you want to get published, you need to understand the publishing process. You need to write brilliant papers. You need to get involved with refereeing and being part of the community. And you need to learn how to deal with referees' reports and understand the key success factors. And I'm more than happy to give you some insights and also discuss things. And quite often we need to understand what is a good paper and what's a toilet paper. And quite often, from what I see, I get about 600 papers per year. Some authors cannot actually distinguish what's a good paper and what's a toilet paper. So we really need to contribute to theory, and theory is universal truth. Quite a lot of papers we get are about one specific location, the village of my mother syndrome, as I say. You really need to, if you're doing research in India, would that be applicable in Aveiro or in Sao Paulo or Edinburgh or in Yamoussoukro? If it's not, then it will not be published in Tourism Review. It may be relevant to an Indian journal, but not on an international journal. And that does not apply only to tourism, it applies to marketing, it applies to everything else. And does your paper actually contribute to theory and help organizations and governments in multiple locations to benefit from the conclusions? And do they take science forward? And I like to give you a little bit of the inside story in a way that a lot of people do not see these things. And you ask for the specifics. So referee selections, we need, I say 2 to 3, but actually I always go for, I need 4 good reviews to make a decision. And we will ask a lot of people to actually do that. So now I'm asking about 12 people to give me 4, to get 4 good reviews. Quite often we involve editorial board members, and we are looking for different kind of people. Referees are not always right, but they usually are, and they've got some good ideas. And it's really how you engage with what they say. And if you're not a referee yourself, if you're not in the reference list, I suggest that you make yourself available and you say to the editor that you would like to publish, I'd like to be part of your journey and part of your journal, and I'd like to be refereeing papers. Now, let's explain what's happening here, and that's probably one of the best graphs that explains the all. So submission is coming in, and then you've got 3 outcomes. One is desk reject, and I've got to tell you, for Tourism Review, desk rejection is 65%. 65% of the papers that are coming, they are desk rejected, and that's the end of their career. Another 5 to 10% may be rejected, but with an invitation to resubmit. So we say, okay, it can potentially be useful, but you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things before we send out the reviewing. That's a quick process, which actually saves a lot of time for people. People may get upset when that happens, but actually it's a good thing to happen because the editor has now given you some feedback and some directions on how you can actually publish. Then the next thing, which the positive thing, is sending the paper for reviewing. As I said, typically in Tourism Review, it goes to 12 people, and then when I've got 4 good reviews, I make a decision. The decision typically is to make a revision and improve the paper based on the feedback, or reject the paper. Now, about 15 to 20% of the papers are being rejected at this stage. So 65 plus 15, 80. 8% of 80% of the papers are rejected on what we call R1. If you're invited to revise and you resubmit, it goes again to revision, again back to the reviewers to ask people whether the new version is better. And then you are going to that kind of loop that can go around several times. Typically in tourism review, we have got 4 loops before a paper is accepted. So it will be normally 3 kind of revisions before it actually gets accepted. But once we are going through this 8%, there's about 8 to 10% chances that it's rejected later, but still it can still get rejected. Okay. And I think what I'm always saying to people is that once your paper is accepted, you need to promote it and tell the world that you have written this. And also you need to have several papers that they are in progress at the same time, so you're progressing things. Now, I think it's really important to understand what the editor is doing, because the editor never sleeps and there are a lot of decisions to be made. So this is a typical kind of screen I'll see. 2 new papers submitted, 1 waiting review selection, 4 waiting for review invitation, 2 wait review assignment, 1 overdue reviewer scores, and 5 papers that they are waiting for a decision. Now, I remember this, and I took this picture because this is back in 2019 when I was traveling. I went to Australia. So I left London and I was flying through Singapore, and I arrived in Australia 26 hours later. Before I left London, I've cleared that. So in 26 hours, this was on my inbox. So you need to be patient, because the editor is also teaching, researching, write papers, administrates at the university. I was head of department at that time, manage departments, mentor students, supervise PhDs, travel, deliver keynotes, eat, sleep, and sometimes party. Okay, so you really need to work with the editor to develop that. So this on that day, living out of Gatwick, you can see the planes on the background, and you see what happened 26 hours later. So I don't want to spend more time. We can have a conversation, but please have a look at Tourism Review, download, read regularly, ask your students to read, review papers, submit papers, and invite to support you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Dimitrios. Again, in the interest of time, I will request Professor Rodoula Tsiotsou to talk about the publication and the role of the editor and her perspective. And maybe towards the end, we can take up some questions. Please, again, I will request, please put your questions in the chat box, and maybe I will appreciate if you can also point out the name of the esteemed panel members with whom you want to ask question. Otherwise, we can have it an open discussion. Thank you. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation before. I just want to add some information. I'm here as an associate editor of JSM. However, I'm also an associate editor for the International Journal of Consumer Studies, and I collaborate with Justin Paul. I'm here today because I was asked by Mark Rosenbaum and Anish to represent JSM, and that's why I'm going to talk today about JSM. JSM is an old marketing journal. It was established in 1987. The editors, it has two editors, Rebecca Russell Bennett and Mark Rosenbaum. This seems that it will be a pattern for JSM. Two editors from different parts of the world, from different continents. The impact factor of JSM was 4.46 in 2020. The rejection rate is 86%. And we have an editorial team, 22 associate editors. Half of them are females and half of them are males. Those come from 12 different countries. In general, I would say that Journal of Services Marketing is a diverse journal. Is trying to be inclusive and represent not only in the editorial board, but also on the papers, different countries and different case studies from those countries. What are looking usually in our articles? First of all, which is important for not having an article desk rejected, is to have the article positioned on services marketing. We often receive papers that come from other areas. Maybe they are from goods or from consumer behavior, but not from a service perspective. So desk rejected these papers. And also, as Dimitrios mentioned before, we have several submissions where the authors seems that they don't know the journal they submit. They don't know the publications that we have, the articles. They don't discuss those articles. And of course, this is another reason to desk reject a paper. So regarding the first question that the coordinator of the panel asked, you have to know the journal. If you want to submit a journal, you have to know also the positioning of the journal and the main areas that the journal is looking for. And definitely when someone submits an article, he or she needs to show that he knows the articles published in the same journal. Often when I administer papers, ask the authors to look better into the journal because they miss significant literature from the journal. And this is not because I want the journal to be cited, but because those articles are very important in the international literature. And the authors have missed this information. So what I'm looking at JSM is contemporary, controversial, and cutting-edge topics. Although JSM is an old journal, it seems that we're trying to deliberate ourselves from traditional services marketing views. For example, sometimes we receive papers regarding service quality. For us, this topic is outdated. I mean, it was relevant in the 90s and early 2000, but it's not relevant now, except if there is a completely different approach to it. We want well-written and clear relevance in the papers. Also, we require a rigorous research methodology. We would like to see a diverse range of methodological, philosophical, and theoretical approaches. And at the same time, we require to have a strong managerial position. We need to see managerial implications, and this is required from every paper. So, specifically, what we are looking for. Over the last few years, with the direction Rebecca and Mark have given to the journal, we see that we're trying to.
Just to, sorry to interrupt. Ma'am, are you changing your slides also? Because the slide is the title slide right now that we are able to see.
Yes, I'm changing.
Oh, okay, fine. I mean, I just wanted to check because some of
no,
we just wanted.
Vaibhav, it is not here. It is not reflecting on the main screen.
Yeah, it's because it's not, the main screen only has the title slide.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Let me.
She's in which slide now? How do we
and
know?
reshare it. I don't know what's the problem.
Which slide are you in, ma'am, now?
Okay, let's see. I'm here. Do you see now?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, very much.
The third slide. I'm sorry, you should have told me before.
No,
when I do full screen, maybe it doesn't change for you.
Possibly, ma'am.
Okay.
I think this is
Then
good
I
enough.
will keep this format.
Yeah, this is good enough, ma'am. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as I was saying before, we want contemporary, controversial topics. We want well-written papers. We want rigorous methodology. We want diverse methodological, philosophical, and theoretical approaches. And we require practical implications for sure. What we look for in relation to the topics, we look for topics that have that cover consumer, societal, and global issues. We have extended, I would say, the interest of the journal not to just the consumer behavior in services, but also we want to examine societal issues and global issues. Therefore, we are open to submissions from different countries. Actually, we have in an effort to achieve diversity. We don't require, for example, data from just US or UK. We want to see the views and the approaches from different countries. And actually, if you, in the last issue that JSM published, there was a very interesting case from Zambia. It was a very good project about service inclusion, which is a topic that interests us. So of course that paper was published and was not rejected because it was from Zambia. We want to have a diversity of views, a diversity of case studies, a diversity, as I said, in general. We're also looking for issues that relate to health services, financial services, environmental issues, ecotourism, technologies, new technologies. Those are some of the areas that we are looking for the next 5 at least years. In addition, we dare, I would say, to look for papers from services that are not that popular. For example, the first issue that came out in 2022 was an issue that a special issue that I just edited with Phil Klaus about modification and beautification services, surgeries, Botox, and all the other interventions that take place. Also look for gambling, for topics of gambling, on intimacy services, services that people or journals usually do not touch or want to touch. Moreover, we want researchers from other research areas, especially those in least developed countries or emerging economies, as I mentioned before. So we are open to the world for challenging new topics in new areas. And also methodologically, we are trying to encourage interdisciplinary approaches in the methods and also in conceptual papers. Also, we look for papers beyond self-reports to use more objective data, to collect more objective data. And in general, we're trying to offer to our readers something new, something that will intrigue their thinking and develop new research that is not available in other journals. Some examples, you can see here some articles that we have published, their topics. For example, this commentary from John Bateson about aging is a very intriguing and very interesting approach to aging from the services side of view. So you can go through the journal and take a look on the topics that we published. In the previous years, we had several issues being published every year. In 2021, we had 9 issues. So the journal is growing. We have more issues. We try to have 2 special issues per year. Usually those special issues are guest edited by at least 1 associate editor, with some exceptions if the topic is very interesting. Now there is 1 special issue that is on the effects of the physical context on customer experience. The deadline is April 1st. So whoever is doing research on this topic could submit the paper for this special issue. And of course, you can visit and see the journal on the website, the Emerald website. And on our social media, we have an account on Facebook and also on LinkedIn. Now, regarding the question about the reviewing process, usually the editors are sharing the papers that are submitted, and then they allocate to each associate editor. Each associate editor is responsible for certain research areas. So they don't take randomly papers to administer, but based on their personal knowledge and research interest, they administer papers. Usually we send out papers to 3 reviewers, and we're trying to get 3 good reviews. If we have 2 good reviews, the associate editor usually acts as a 3rd reviewer. Desk rejects, as I said before, are usually because the paper is not relevant or it doesn't add much to the service literature, and that's why either the editors or the associate editors make a desk reject decision. Usually, most of the papers are going at least 3 rounds of reviews until they are at the stage where they can be published. Also, what I see often is that in addition to the lack of knowledge on the literature of JSM, some authors do not comply with our guidelines. For example, the journal has a structured abstract. Often we see that authors do not even comply to this, which is very obvious since it's the first thing that we see. So this is another reason for desk reject. Or sometimes we have a limit on the size of the title of the paper. The authors need to pay attention to these details. I know sometimes this is time consuming, but it shows that the paper is prepared for the specific journal, for JSM. And this is what I would recommend to junior researchers or PhD students. First, to look for topics that interest them and topics that are beyond what is available in the literature. Because they need to contribute to science by proposing or suggesting some new ideas or some new approaches. I understand the focus or the anxiety to publish in high impact journals. However, most important is to build a scholarship, to build a reputation on solid ground. And the first thing, as I said, that they need to do is to find an idea that is maybe provocative, maybe interesting, and then to study the literature on this idea to see what is available. And finally, before submitting to a journal, to format the paper according to the journal requirements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Any questions? Please feel free to put it in the chat box. Just one small question specifically for young researchers. Whenever you write a script and whenever you submit the script from the researcher's perspective, they think that this is the best perspective that they would have got, but then maybe after a certain revision, sometimes it gets most of the time it gets sometimes desk reject, or maybe after 4 or 5 reviews it gets rejected. So how does specifically young researchers handle this kind of rejection? I'll go to Professor Dimitrios and then Professor Rodoula. What would you suggest to them?
Okay, first I think it is wrong to assume that that young researchers have not very good ideas. I think a lot of innovations come from very young researchers, and it's about them understanding a little bit the process, so they can easily bring what they are studying it to be much more efficient in publications. So that's the first thing. So, and also the other thing to remember is that the editors often they do not know the age, the seniority of professors, and the reviewers definitely don't. So that's one thing. The second thing is, so how do young researchers understand the process better? By being part of the process, by reviewing for others. And I've got to tell everybody, so please, if there's anything I'd like you to remember is that editors also get rejected from other editors. So I had 2 rejections this week, and that I'm not very good in taking that. When I get a rejection, I've got a special whiskey that helps digesting this. But then after a while, you kind of learn to read very carefully what the reviewers are saying. So, and a lot of my PhD students, and I've got Thomas here, they are kind of writing to be accepted. And I always say to them, write to be not rejected. That is fundamentally different. So if you write a paper, the most important thing is that you are not getting desk rejected. And if you get desk rejected, you need to understand why you got desk rejected. And you should really love to be desk rejected quickly, within a couple of days. Because if you get the desk rejected in 3 months, you have wasted 100 days waiting for someone to desk reject you. Okay, so this is very, very important to understand which are the journals that are efficient and they manage the process efficiently. So we normally in tourism review would desk reject within 3 days, and we get the first decision within 32 days on average. And I don't know of anybody who had to wait for more than 2 months on exceptional circumstances. And it has happened only when there's Christmas involved or summer holiday or There are some times that you cannot avoid it, but the average is 32 days. So when you get rejected, either desk rejected or in subsequent irritations, you really need to understand why you got desk rejected or why you got rejected. What can you do to improve? And I think one of the most important things is that have you submitted the right journal? Because quite often we have no option than rejecting something. So typically in tourism review, I reject anything that doesn't have to do with tourism. So if someone would like to write about the marketing of, I don't know, medical services, if it doesn't have to do with tourism, it will get desk rejected. The other thing is that increasingly rejecting papers about hospitality, which is kind of relative, but now I've got so many papers. So I've got 600, I get about 600 papers submitted. I need 80. So you do the maths, right? There's a huge competition. So I'll look into, is this relevant to my journal or should I bring another journal? And down the road, you may find another journal that fits you well. But I've got to tell you as an author, I've had rejections from a lower journal of papers that then they were accepted by a better journal. Sometimes there's a bit of luck, but read very carefully why is the paper rejected. Is this new? Is it something that my audience would like to read? Or is it something that everybody else has been writing about and you kind of say an idea, okay, let me also write about smart tourism, right? And then what happens is, of course, it's not going to be innovative. So if anybody was writing about smart tourism, should have written about 5 years ago. Now it needs to be much more cutting edge because everything that has had to be said has been said already. So when you get rejected, you really need to understand why and learn from the process. It's not how many times you fall, but how many times you stand up again and you move on.
Professor Rodoula, you want to add to what Professor Dimitrios has just said, ma'am?
Yes. First of all, I agree with what Dimitrios said to almost everything. Another issue that I would like to add to this is that I think at the PhD level, it is the responsibility of the supervisors to educate their students, in how to write papers, to inform them about the process, and also to somehow try to develop an ethos, research ethos, to their students. Often students, I see especially junior researchers, are too aggressive in their effort to publish. And sometimes this is not very good, for their long-term existence in the academia. So I would say that they need to be patient. They need, as Dimitri said, to understand why they receive a rejection. They need to, before they go out to the academia, to collaborate with their supervisor, to understand all this, so they are prepared somehow. Because I have to say that I have been contacted by several PhD students from Iran, Iraq, India, and other countries in order to supervise them, guide them actually how to publish, although they have a supervisor. So my response is you need to collaborate on this with your supervisor, and he is the leader in this case. And when you finish your PhD and you become an independent researcher, then you can contact me. Otherwise, I don't want to interfere in the job of the supervisor. This is not my role or someone else's role. So, as I said, it's the supervisor responsibility, then is the conscious, I would say, decision of a junior researcher to try to understand what is happening, what is the process, what are the requirements, and also to learn from rejections. I don't know any colleague who hasn't been rejected, whose paper hasn't been rejected, okay? My papers have been rejected, everybody's have been rejected. The thing is how you react to this rejection. Either you learn, or you can cry, or you learn and drink a glass of whiskey, as Dimitrios does. I usually try to learn. Actually, I become, more intrigued in order to understand why I have been that the paper has been rejected. And if I made a mistake, I'm trying to, to see differently the paper and even change it completely. So I would recommend, again, for junior researchers to be patient, to know, to understand, and to try to establish an ethos in academia. That's, for me, is more important than publishing, 20 papers in high impact journals.
I think I need to say a couple of things here to complement Rodoula. I think she's absolutely right. There are two or three things. One is, remember that this is a marathon, it's not 100 meters. And make sure that you do not make some silly mistakes. I'm currently looking into, we're having 2 investigations from people that they've done some really, really silly things, and they've involved senior colleagues, and they've published papers that they shouldn't have been published. So ethical behavior is not questionable. So ethical behavior needs really, really to be observed, and you need to make sure that your students and also your supervisors are equally ethical. Rodoula said, go to your supervisor, which is a good advice, but at the same time, we've seen many times supervisors that they are not good, or they're supervisors that they are actually are not having ethical behavior, or students that don't have ethical behavior. We need to discuss about these things openly in order to be able to do something about it. So you really need, if your supervisor is not the appropriate person, there may be a senior colleague, or it may be someone that you aspire to, and you really need to have a conversation. But we really need to understand what we're doing, to do it ethically, and there are no shortcuts. Actually, there's hard work that's required in order to be able to publish good things. And I think the last thing I'm going to say is that, look, your research needs to have relevance, needs to contribute to society, because ultimately in most countries, the taxpayer is paying for us. In most countries, the taxpayer is supporting research. So the taxpayer needs to get value for money and value for time, and the society is looking to us, the people that they've been educated through the system, to create solutions for societal problems. So if your research is not doing any of that, and the only thing that says is, can I get promoted? Can I get a job? Can I do these things? Then it's kind of, it does not contribute. So you really need ethical behavior, contribution to society, make sure that it's collegiate, and we work together.
Thank you, Professor Dimitrios and Professor Rodoula. I think it's time to summarize, and because we have another session lined up, a parallel session, which is going to start in about 10 minutes. So just to conclude, I think if I might summarize and the learning from the session, then if I summarize what our esteemed panel members have said, and just for the benefit, I think the first thing we need to look at the idea. An idea should be contributing significantly to the stakeholders, whether it is society or business. Selection of the journal is very important. Please ensure that the journal and the mission and the vision of the journal is related to the work. So as Professor Dimitrios said, or Professor Rodoula said, if anything which is not related, the paper normally gets rejected. Third important point is about the rigor and in terms of methodology and the contribution, the kind of literature that you have gone through. I think that is something which the editors look into, whether you have done the substantial rigor in terms of your research. Fourth important point is about the generalizability, and when you are talking about your research and your can we mute please? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye.
So can we mute please?
Hanji.
Nazia Taneza, please mute.
Okay. Thank you. So the fourth important point is about the selection. Besides the selection of the right journal, the rigor is very important. Number 5 is about whether what you are finding, is it context specific finding or generalizable finding. I think that is something which is important. Unless your finding is generalizable, that again is one thing which is looked by the editors when they are taking decisions on your manuscript. The third part is about very, very important before you submit, as Professor Rodoula talks about, is the guidelines of the journal. Please don't make mistakes in terms of whether it is scope or whatever the instructions and the guidelines that are given in the journal website. Please look into that. The last part, I think, which I will again put it into, is that when you talk about rejection, I think as Professor Dimitrios rightly pointed out, it's not about whether you fall. Everyone falls, and that is for everyone, whether he's a senior person like him or maybe a young researcher who has just completed his PhD. It's not about how many you will fall. That is something which you should mentally be prepared for. It's not about, but in terms of to sustain in this competitive world, in terms of, if you want to then learn from it, I think that is something which is the key, which determines where your paper will land up with. So one important point is that you should learn from your failures, go back, reflect what mistakes. I think the comments becomes very important from whether it is the editor or from the reviewers. I think that can be a good starting point in terms of where mistakes you are making, and you can correct those mistakes and then maybe focus on resubmitting. And the last but not the least, I think the ethics part, which Professor, I think is very important. In the hurry of publishing and making papers and submitting papers and getting a publication count, I think this should not be at the cost of ethics. And this is something which everyone's, whether you are at whatever stage you are, whether you are a PhD supervisor or whether you are a PhD student, we need to keep that in mind. And that is again very, very important, that is something which is critical as far as your career is concerned. So I'll once again thank both our esteemed panel members, Professor Dimitrios and Professor Rodoula, for taking out time and contributing their valuable insights for our audience. I'll conclude my session here, and I'll see you guys in one of the 2 parallel sessions. One is for the young researchers in terms of which is moderated by Professor Abhishek Mishra, and second one is about the managing the pandemic, which is done by Professor Pradeep Krishna. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor Dimitrios and Professor Rodoula. So we have another sessions. After 5 minutes, I'll share the link with you. In case you are free, you both are most welcome to join and listen to young researchers. But thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And thank you, madam, for your wonderful. Unfortunately, Professor Mark was not able to join because of some issues, but it was really interesting, this session. I request the entire audience to please move on to the another session. The panel members have already there. They are already there. So we would start the session in 3:20 p.m. Requesting each one of you to please leave this Zoom link and immediately move on to the next Zoom link.